Howdy, guys. Jimmy Song here. Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Tech Talk. I know I haven't had this in a few weeks, but we'll go over some of the stories from this week. This is the show where I go through some of the technical improvements that have happened, or some events and news that regard the technical stuff within Bitcoin, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Anyway, I apologize for not having done some of these in the past few weeks. I was in different countries and so on, and oftentimes, unlike Tone, I have a difficult time like making all of that happen. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the stories, and then I will take some of your questions later. But here is Bitcoin Tech Talk. Yeah, there we go. So we have a bunch of things going on here, but before we get to all of that, I want to tell you about my book. It is Programming Bitcoin. It is available on Amazon for $40.59, and you can see that it can be delivered almost right away. The other thing, did the Kindle price drop? Huh. Okay, you can rent it for $11.30, which isn't something that I knew was even possible. If you are interested in taking my course, you can apply now to take the course in San Francisco next week, basically, June 27th and 28th. It is a very intense 2-day seminar, and you can learn all about Bitcoin and how to develop on it. I've never had anyone say it was too easy and so on. So very good course if you are interested. All right, let's get to some of the stories. There were a bunch of things that have happened over the last few weeks, and hopefully this issue covers a lot of them. And you could see a lot of what is going on. Let me just pull up, make sure I have the chat so that I can... okay, yeah, there we go. All right, so I do have the chat there. All right. Let's pop out the chat so I could see it more clearly. All right, great. All right, so let's take a look at the first one. This is Erlay, and this is basically a huge performance boost to the Bitcoin network. And Sam Wouters has essentially described exactly how Erlay works. Essentially, there's a lot of data that's going back and forth that's redundant. And what Erlay does is it makes it... it uses Minisketch, which is a set resolution protocol to make the actual back and forth much less. So you're using less of your bandwidth to run a full node. And this is a very important aspect of one of the limitations of running a full node is the bandwidth usage. And if you can minimize the bandwidth, then this can be very, very useful. So with Erlay, you can get much better awesomeness, I guess. That's what this is saying, basically. This very good explanation of how it all works, along with these wonderful drawings, stick figures, and so on. But using Minisketch, this can be much, much better. All right, let's talk about some other stuff. This is Cerebras. All right, Cerebras Protocol, Secure Bitcoin Storage for Businesses, the first chapter of our guide to corporate Bitcoin self-storage. So the idea behind this is that a lot of corporations don't know how to store their Bitcoin. So this is an open protocol to make self-custody possible. And if you don't know about Cerberus, it is the mythical three-headed dog that guards the river Styx or something like that. It's the idea is that you have some sort of like multi-sig, so three-headed monster, get it? Like that guard stuff. That's the idea behind this protocol. But it's to make sure that it's not in the hands of one person that can embezzle the money and so on. Unlike Quadriga or something like that, you have some sort of thing that makes it a lot easier to self-custody and so on. So very good protocol. I encourage you to read the whole thing, especially if you have your own business. All right, let's take a look at the next one. This is a white paper from CoinShares, and they did an excellent job just like talking about all things mining. And probably the headline that you've seen is that most of the energy that the Bitcoin network uses is actually green because it allows you to have place miners close to the energy source and use them up instead of the energy having to travel to the point where it gets used, which uses up a lot of energy in of itself. Anyway, really good stuff, and it talks about all sorts of mining equipment and all the details around it. But this is a great paper to read, and it goes through a lot of different things about mining that's totally worth knowing about. All right, another white paper is the Gotenna white paper. They finally published it. This is a draft version 0.8.5. Lightweight protocol to incentivize mobile peer-to-peer communication. The idea is that if the internet were to go down, you can still use this in order to, create more, broadcast transactions and still be able to run a full node. And the whole idea is that you would have these radio antennas that can broadcast and receive. And there's a relay protocol, so you could theoretically use something like this even in the confines of something like North Korea, which would be amazing indeed. Pretty much everywhere else in the world you have some internet access, so this may not be quite as useful. But I mean, well, actually, it's still useful because you can anonymize by using Gotenna. By broadcasting to the Gotenna system, there's no IP per se that can be traced back to you. You can trace it back to the actual antenna that transmitted it, but it's a larger area than a specific IP or something like that. Of course, you can also use Tor for that. But yeah, this is another way to do everything. All right. State Chains white paper. So this is State Chains was talked about a lot more in my newsletter last week. I know I didn't have a show during then, but it is a really interesting idea from Ruben Samson. He gave a presentation at Breaking Bitcoin, and it's using a whole bunch of stuff, including Schnorr, adapter signatures, L2, and a bunch of other things. And the whole point is that instead of transferring the UTXO, you can transfer the private key. And it sounds kind of crazy that this is something that you could do, but it is something that you can do. And it requires some sort of like central party that you kind of trust, but not exactly. They can't take the funds away from you. So they don't really have custody per se. So there's a lot of sort of regulatory advantages to using something like this. And what's even crazier is that you can open a Lightning channel from this sort of new state without going on chain at all. So you could bring in new Lightning participants into through the use of state chains. And that in itself is really, really cool. And the ostensible reason you would do that is because UTXO has a certain amount in it, and you don't really have divisibility if you're just passing the private key around. So if a UTXO has 0.5 Bitcoin, you can't pay 0.1 Bitcoin very easily unless you use Lightning. And that's what this part of the paper is talking about. If you can essentially open a Lightning channel and do the entire Lightning Bolt protocol and pay someone 0.1 out of that UTXO, and then it sort of stays as a part of the Lightning network until all of it is on one side or the other. At which point that person can then continue on the state chain and make it go through. So it's a really interesting idea, and this is one of those like layer 2 things that sort of combine with everything else to make extra awesome stuff. We still have to study it and understand exactly how everything's going to work and move and so on. But this is something that we should pay attention to very closely. Ruben has a very interesting idea. The trust model is different, the security model is different, and so on. But in combination with everything else, this may very well be something that makes Lightning super, super useful as a layer 2. All right, another story, this one on Lightning, making a Lightning web app, part 4. Willow Byrne has had this series. This is part 4 of 5 on making a Lightning network app. And yeah, I mean, all of the parts are worth reading. There's a lot of code here, and you can figure out, like, he's basically teaching you how to create a web-based Lightning app, and given that he's a creator of Joule, that makes all the sense in the world. Let's see. Whoops, wrong click there. All right, Zap Android is now available, and Jack Mallers has basically announced it in this Medium post. But yeah, this is really awesome. You can now use Zap on Android, and you need to have an LND node and connect to it and so on. But this is the trusted model that you would need to make all of that work, and it's really cool. You can send money back and forth really quickly and so on. Applause to Jack for getting this done. We need more Lightning wallets, so it's great to have more choices. All right, this is an interesting idea from Willow Byrne again. Joule allowances. So oftentimes in Lightning, what you have are these like really tiny transactions that are like Satoshis or something like that, and you don't below a certain threshold, it's not worth thinking about. There's a mental cost to calculating whether or not it's something worthwhile. If it's just like below a penny or something like that, you might just be like, hey, you know what? I don't really care, just pay it. And that's what Joule allowances does, is it doesn't pop up something every time you need to pay 50 Satoshis or something like that. And you set the limit, and basically it'll automatically pay anything below that particular amount. So really cool idea. And the fact that Joule supports this, I suspect that other Lightning based apps will need this kind of functionality, because if you're paying like on a per minute basis for some sort of service, then that sort of thing might be very useful. All right, and final story is from one of my former students, Eli Sheets, and he's actually a lawyer and a coder, which is actually an interesting intersection in and of itself. But he goes through and analyzes copyright law and how you can challenge some hypothetical work and so on. Really interesting analysis, especially if you're into law and copyright and so on. But yeah, this is worth reading just to understand what copyright is and how it works and so on. I am a libertarian. I don't really like copyrights, but it's good to know how it all works, especially with respect to what a certain someone did with registering a copyright, acting like it meant something. All right. Anyway, that is about it. Let's talk about my book again. It is available on Amazon. You can see 22 customer reviews, almost all of them 5-star. Let's see what the latest one is. I don't think I knew about that. My take on the cost. Yeah, this is true. Facts. Color was used extensively. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got 4 stars for that one. This checks. Yeah, I don't know why I got 4 stars for that, but whatever it is, it's great. I'm happy that this is getting into the hands of people. Some of you might be aware that the Afghan Girls Code, they requested some copies of my book, so I'm trying to raise some money for them. So that's one thing I need to show. The other one is my Programming Blockchain San Francisco that is happening on June 27th and 28th. That's next Thursday and Friday, and it will be at the Blockchain Capital offices. So that will be really fun as well. And lastly, Bitcoin 2019 is also happening in San Francisco, and I will be speaking there, although it isn't entirely clear exactly what panel I'll be on and so on. I really wanted to be on one with Jihan Wu. I was going to ask him some really uncomfortable questions, but he dropped out, so that's not happening. So this is going to be a really fun conference to be at, and it'll be in San Francisco. And it looks like ticket price increases on June 24th. I think that's a week from today. So if you show up at the door, it's going to cost a lot of money. So yeah, please come. I don't know why Tim Draper is on the cover of this. Who knows? Well, whatever. We'll figure all this out. Anyway, very excited to be at this conference. Apparently, there's a flash sale or something, so you can get in on that. I will be there next week before yeah. But anyway, it's going to be fun. All right, let's see. Let's see if there's any questions in chat. So it addresses scaling. It can if that particular model is a trust model and security model is satisfactory to all parties, then state chains could definitely be something that addresses scaling. Yeah, that's about it for this week. I don't see any other questions. So let's stop screen sharing and give you guys a view. Anyway, that's about it. There's a lot of things going on in Bitcoin these days, and everyone's watching the price and so on. And it does feel like there's some sort of inflection point here, and who knows if this is the beginning of another bull run or whatever. All I can say is that it is a very exciting time to be alive, and the fact that we get to all experience this massive transfer of wealth and everything else is really exciting. Anyway, hope all of that helps you. This song is done.